Have you ever felt uneasy in a place as ordinary as a supermarket? A simple trip to pick up groceries can turn into something far more sinister when the sun goes down and shadows take over. Tonight we dive into 3 terrifying stories from real night shift workers who encountered things they can't explain: the echo of footsteps in empty aisles, mysterious notes left on shelves, and the appearance of haunting figures in the dark. These aren't just tales, they're chilling accounts that will make you think twice about being the last person in a store at night. Prepare yourself, because what you're about to hear will forever change the way you see these everyday places. Stay till the end if you dare. The night shift worker. Jack always preferred working the night shift. At Clearfield Groceries, nights were quiet, and customers rarely came in. Jack enjoyed the stillness, the calm, the way he could organize products on the shelves without the rush of the daytime crowd. But lately something felt off. The first sign was the sound of footsteps in the frozen food section. He was sure he was alone, and at first he thought it was just an echo of his own steps. But as he stood still, he realized the sounds continued, clear and steady, as if someone was pacing down the aisle, just a little further each time he tried to follow. He didn't think much of it at first, but gradually the strange sounds began to unsettle him. One night, just as the store was about to close, Jack noticed a shadowy figure on the monitor in the meat section. A person stood motionless like a statue in the dark corner. The screen resolution was poor, but Jack could clearly make out the outline of a figure that seemed to stare directly at the camera. Chilled but resolute, Jack grabbed a flashlight and decided to investigate, hoping it was just a trick of the lights. He walked cautiously down the aisles, his flashlight illuminating the darkened space. But when he reached the meat section, it was empty. Then, his flashlight flickered and went out, plunging him into darkness. Cold sweat trickled down his spine as he heard a faint rustling sound, followed by the creak of the floor. It was slow, deliberate, as if someone or something was moving toward him. Panicked, Jack switched to his phone's flashlight, sweeping the beam back and forth. But there was no one there. Back in the surveillance room, he scanned the monitors again. This time, all he saw was emptiness, as if the person had vanished. Jack tried to tell himself it was all in his head, but the strange occurrences only grew more frequent. One night, while restocking boxes in the storage room, he noticed a woman standing by the dairy section doors. Her eyes were wide, staring straight at him. Dressed in outdated clothing, she looked as though she had stepped out of another era. Jack blinked, and she was gone. The panic surged through him, and he began to feel watched every moment he was in the store. The most unsettling incident came when he noticed a can of food had fallen onto the floor in the fruit section. He picked it up, but as soon as he walked away, he heard the can hit the floor again. Every time he returned, the can had somehow rolled to a different spot, as if someone was trying to get his attention. Finally, Jack confided in his manager, who simply laughed at his ghost stories. The manager dismissed it as fatigue, but some of his colleagues admitted to seeing strange things as well. One mentioned a woman in old-fashioned clothing, and another spoke of mysterious sounds echoing in the dark. Determined to prove he wasn't imagining things, Jack set up a hidden camera in the frozen food section. An hour later, he reviewed the footage. The video showed a shadow slowly approaching the camera, but whenever Jack turned his head, the aisle remained empty. A few more nights passed before Jack couldn't take it anymore. He decided to quit the night shift and handed in his resignation. Not long afterward, he heard that the person who took over his shift had also left abruptly, claiming to have seen a woman with unnaturally wide open eyes. The shelf ghosts. Mark was lucky to land a job at a small supermarket on the edge of town. The pay was decent, and the night shifts barely required any effort. His co-workers said that most of the hard work was done during the day shift, leaving only light cleaning and stocking for the night crew. Mark enjoyed the nighttime quiet, but on his first shift something felt off. The store wasn't as silent as he expected. Among the hum of refrigerators and fans, he could hear faint whispering. He chalked it up to the usual noises of an old building, amplified in the stillness of the night. However, over time the whispering grew louder. Sometimes it felt as if someone were standing right behind him, and when he turned around, he would only see the long aisles and silent shelves. The feeling of being watched intensified. One night, he noticed a small piece of paper tucked between packages on the grain shelf. Scribbled in messy handwriting, it read, "Can you see me?" Mark's nerves tightened. It seemed like a prank, probably left by someone from the day shift to mess with him. He crumpled the note and tossed it away, trying to convince himself it was a coincidence. But over the next few nights, similar scraps of paper began appearing in various sections of the store. At first they contained strange questions, but soon they carried messages that made his heart race. "I'm close, you can't leave. Help me." During one shift, Mark locked himself in the back office, where the security monitors were. One screen showed the entrance, another the checkout area, and two others showed the distant aisles between shelves. As he watched the monitors, he saw yet another note on one of the shelves. But this time he noticed something else, a hand reaching out from behind a row of dairy products. The hand held a note and then slowly pulled back behind the shelf. His hands trembling, Mark decided to step out of the office, grab a flashlight, and investigate. He moved carefully through the aisles, trying to keep his breathing steady. On the shelf where he'd seen the hand, he found another note that read, "You shouldn't have come here." His heart pounded as he backed away, holding the flashlight tightly. Then he heard something fall. It was an envelope that had somehow slid onto the floor, as if someone had nudged it forward. Opening it, he found an old photograph. It showed a man in what looked like a store uniform, staring solemnly into the camera. On the back of the photograph was a date, October 23, 1989. Mark knew the supermarket was only built 10 years ago. Whoever was in that photo must have worked somewhere that stood on this spot before. Consumed by both fear and curiosity, he decided to look up the history of the area. After digging around, he learned that a small grocery store had once stood here, and its owner had been found dead under mysterious circumstances. Every day, the atmosphere in the supermarket grew more oppressive. Mark began to see shadows at the end of the aisles, each one clearer than the last. One night, he saw that hand on the monitor again. This time, there was an entire figure, a shadowy silhouette of a person in an old uniform. Gathering his courage, Mark decided to approach it despite his growing dread. But as he neared the shelf, the figure vanished, leaving behind an eerie chill. In the following days, stranger things began to happen. Products would fall from shelves, and the shelves themselves creaked, as if they were being moved. One night, feeling unusually brave, he called out, "Who are you? What do you want?" There was no answer. But on the floor near the canned goods section lay another note. This time it said, "No one can leave as long as I'm here." Mark couldn't take it anymore. Bringing a camera, he recorded everything strange he could find that night. At one point, he saw the shadowy figure again at the end of an aisle. This time it was solid, almost like a real person. It didn't move, just watched him. The camera captured the figure, but as he stepped toward it, a piercing scream filled the air, making him drop the camera. The scream blended with a terrifying whisper that filled the space. Ice-cold fear gripped him, and Mark realized he couldn't stay another second. He bolted from the store, leaving everything behind, vowing never to return. The next morning, when the day shift arrived, the security cameras were still running. One of the recordings showed something or someone moving along the shelves. It was a faint shadow, barely visible, but clearly staring directly into the camera. It left one final note, short and chilling, "I'm waiting for you, Mark." The last customer. Emily worked as a cashier at Greystone Market on the outskirts of town. She always tried to avoid night shifts, but tonight she had to cover for a sick colleague. At night, the store was empty, with only the occasional customer stopping by for cigarettes or takeout. Her shift was almost over when a strange woman approached the entrance. The woman looked odd. She wore a long, old-fashioned coat and a worn hat that hid her face. Emily felt uneasy, but forced herself to smile. The woman didn't greet her and simply walked along the aisles, moving slowly as though searching for something special. In the dimly lit store, her silhouette seemed eerie, and each of her steps echoed in the silence. Emily tried to avoid looking at the woman, but when she approached the counter, Emily had to speak. "Good evening. Can I help you?" she managed to say, trying to hide the tremor in her voice. The woman didn't respond. She just reached out and slowly placed a small box on the counter. It was an old wooden box, darkened with age. Emily realized it wasn't a store item. As she handed it to Emily, the woman muttered, "He will come looking for it. I just want you to hide it." Before Emily could ask a question, the woman turned abruptly and left the store. Emily stood there, staring at the box, feeling a strange sense of dread wash over her. Part of her wanted to throw the box away, but something held her back. She decided to leave it in the office in the back room, intending to deal with it in the morning. The night dragged on, each hour feeling longer than the last. At one point, she heard the entrance bell ring, and her heart stopped. A tall man with an empty, lifeless gaze approached the counter. He stood uncomfortably close, as though he was ready to grab her. "Have you seen a woman here?" His voice was sharp, like a knife. Emily remembered the strange customer and managed to stammer, "Yes, she was here. She left something and then left." The man squinted as if trying to read her mind. He took a step closer, making Emily instinctively step back. "Where is it?" Emily felt her throat tighten with fear, unsure of what to say. Unexpectedly, she blurted out, "In the back room. If you need it, I can show you." The man nodded slowly, his lips twisting into a strange smile. She turned and led him to the back room, feeling him follow behind her, his steps eerily quiet. When she reached the storage area where she'd left the box, it was gone. Panic gripped her as she looked around, but the box was nowhere to be found. Her heart pounded as the man's voice behind her grew sharper. "You're playing with fire, girl. Give it to me." Emily felt a cold hand grip her shoulder, and she screamed. She spun around, but no one was there. The man had vanished, as if he'd never existed. Panic overwhelmed her. She tried to run out of the back room, but the door slammed shut right in front of her. She sat in the darkness for almost an hour until she felt the door ease open. She raced back to the counter and grabbed the phone, ready to call the police. But as she lifted the receiver, she heard a whisper. "You didn't hide it like I asked." She turned to see the woman standing at the entrance again, her face shadowed by her hat. The woman stood silently, and Emily felt a chill run through her. The woman raised her hand and pointed directly at her. "Now he will come for you." At that moment, the store's lights began to flicker, leaving Emily alone in the terrifying darkness. Each flicker illuminated empty aisles, but in one flash, she saw the man standing at the far end of the store, his face contorted with rage. She ran toward the exit, but the door was locked. Her attempts to open it were in vain. The man's footsteps grew closer, echoing ominously. In desperation, she screamed for help, but her cries dissolved into the empty store. The man came closer, reaching out with his icy hand. Emily felt his cold breath as he whispered, "Return what's mine." Just then, a loud creak rang out, and the store door swung open, flooding the space with light. Emily didn't hesitate and dashed outside, gasping for breath. She looked back to see the store empty, but as her eyes drifted to the shelves by the counter, she spotted the box. It was open, and inside lay an old photograph. It showed a man and a woman dressed in clothes from another era, both staring at the camera with empty eyes. Terrified, Emily grabbed the box and threw it into the dumpster behind the store. She returned inside, deciding to wait until the end of her shift, determined to leave this place forever. The next morning, when her shift ended, she approached her manager and asked to quit. The manager just shrugged and said, "You're not the first to leave after a night shift. Some say they've seen an old woman leaving strange things here, but who knows, it might just be old rumors." Emily, pale and shaken, left the supermarket and never returned. A few days later, she heard that the store had closed for renovations and that one of the new employees had gone missing after his first night shift. Thank you for watching these spine-chilling stories. If you felt the tension and thrill, imagine what else we have in store for you. Help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Your support means we can bring you even more terrifying tales on a regular basis. Hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and share in the comments. Have you ever had a creepy experience in a place as ordinary as a supermarket? We'd love to hear your stories. Until next time, stay alert and remember, sometimes the scariest things happen when you least expect it.